But, if you buy into one of those franchises, periodically you will be audited by, the corporate version of Hungry Jack's or Domino's. And if you make the pizzas incorrectly or you food poison customers, right, your costs as a franchise owner go up, right? The audits increase, and ultimately they can take away the service from you because they do not want someone who gives food poisoning to customers, right? This is not good. You want McDonald's food to be consistent, the world over, right? May not be the most fabulous burger in the place, but the quality should be consistent. And so, yeah, it's the same sort of thing. If the school's eduroam is always broken, that they don't support your authentication types, your phone throws up error messages when you try to connect, that's annoying, and that will stop you using eduroam, and that's bad. That's bad for that local school. It's bad for that, the eduroam user, but it also impacts deployments everywhere. I mean, we will often see this. We often saw this on Twitter. A new US campus would deploy eduroam, and for some reason their deployment would go badly wrong for whatever reason. Mostly miscommunication to students, but we would even get emails to the help@eduroam.org mailing list. People would say, I hope our campus cancels the contract with you. This is the worst Wi-Fi service we've had. And it's like, wait a minute. It's the same Wi-Fi service you used to have before, right? So we don't know what your campus has done. But that's ultimately not good for eduroam. So yes, ideally, statisticians, mathematicians in the room, a model where your member fees are discounted for continued being responsive. So I wouldn't want to fine people instantly. I want to give you a heads up. We think there's a problem at this institution. Go and talk to them and fix it. And as long as that's done in a timely manner, right, there shouldn't be any mistakes happen, right? But if we're going to have an instance where this school never ever fixes the problem, and no one can ever alert them, then the lack of responsiveness of that deployment, that's a problem. We've got to try and curb that. So, and the other thing was, vendor compliance checks. Skilled operators should deploy eduroam, not universities and schools. Smiley face. Yes. Yeah. I mean, sometimes people get it wrong, but that's why there's hopefully help from your NREN, or there's help from the NSRC, or there's various other training programs and training providers that can do that can support you in your campus needs. So if you have problems with your campus network, with your local network, that's also what we want to build, like a better community of practice, so people know how to do it. Farhan was talking about a vendor that was saying their advertising brochures even say they do eduroam, and people have had problems doing the deployment. Right? This is not good when otherwise smart people can't get it to work. So there's exactly, and when we switch to SAML tomorrow, there's many instances where commercial tools do one-to-one SAML, right? And in the academic space, our federations are one-to-many. And so many of these tools are business-to-business only SAML tools, and they don't scale in the R&E environment, where you have one institution and many thousands of services to connect to. They work on, if you want to connect Hertz, Hertz rental car with an airline directly, and you just want to share, the frequent flyer login so they get a discount on Hertz. That's often what some of these commercial tools support. and so they don't scale. So we actually want to make sure that, you know, vendors like Huawei's got an advert out there. They're talking about their Wi-Fi 7 products, and I'm sure their products do open roaming perfectly well. But equally, people will misconfigure their gear and do a deployment that doesn't work. Right? That's because people get it wrong. So, you know, we'd want to work with vendors to make sure there's a known way to get it to work correctly, right? So people aren't guessing. And that also gives confidence to people in the community when you're buying gear, whether it's Huawei or whether it's Nokia, Alcatel, Lucent, Ubiquiti, that the Netgear, whoever, that the equipment will just work, right? You want to have a known way of making the service work. I think that's all I have to. Oh, so we've got 10 minutes. If people have comments, but otherwise I'll be trying to. Yeah.
Sorry. Do you have any idea what kind of like items would need like support? Because of course you have thrown out a lot of ideas, but like what would be the items involved which need funding support?
Yeah, so we don't have so there are some specific sort of data science manually going and trying to classify. So we'd want country representatives to classify the schools and educational institutions that are applicable for eduroam. We'd need to run some infrastructure. That might start in the cloud, but eventually we would use the IP address space of various research networks to try and position servers in locations that people can get access. We're not too sure. You know as well as anyone that V4 is a scarce resource. So the ability to make Anycast addresses available in multiple locations might be difficult or might be expensive in that regard, to try and make sure that the configurations can be very simple. So if we're going to have multiple points of presence, we'd want to have, I think Farhan talked about them using Anycast in Malaysia. They do it in Australia. Luckily, Australia is so big that, you know, you don't have any problems with Anycast flipping between locations. And so they have quite an experience on having their radius endpoints being advertised over Anycast. So it'd be scaling to do that, and then it would be like an advertising campaign, and you know, to try and promote the fact that eduroam exists and people can now partake of it in these territories, and then. Yeah. So I think it could be, I don't know if it's particularly an expensive endeavor, but we would have a short period of time to sort of capitalize on that work to try and make a big push in a short amount of time, and then, you know, use the dying months of the project to try and look at the sustainability options. But at the moment, we have so many gaps, and some operators aren't fulfilling their commitments to the eduroam compliance statement, so that they aren't getting the domain name in place and they aren't getting the trademark. And we don't know whether we'll have trademark problems, because the trademark is secured in most of Europe and the US, so it's secured in locations where everyone is most litigious, right? But we don't want a situation, we don't want the Hungry Jack's situation that we have in Australia. The reason Burger King is called Hungry Jack's in Australia is because in Adelaide, there was already a burger shop called Burger King. So when Burger King tried to come to Australia, it was like, yeah, we're going to call ourselves Burger King. And this little shop said, no, you're not. That's what we call ourselves. And there was ensuing lawsuits, but Hungry Jack's lost, right? So So it doesn't get that name. So we don't want a situation where we can't use, the community projects of eduroam, of govroam, of cityroam from Hideaki. But we need to be able to use those properties in different territories because it's valuable to the community to get that right. So, and unfortunately, that costs money, but most of it is, one-off and small recurrent costs. So, that's something that we want to secure. And so over time, we'll work out how expensive this project would be, and there fits into different tiers of funding available from ISIF. And equally, maybe there'll be money available from TAME. But remember, that's a subset of the community. That's only the 24 members of Asia Connect that can be supported. And we've had quite a lot of difficulty increasing our footprint outside those 24 members. In fact, we can't even support all 24 members. So you can't do work, for instance, in Australia and New Zealand. You can't buy infrastructure in Australia and New Zealand out of that funding. So that was a bit of a surprise to us for some projects, right? We couldn't even, we were going to do a Starlink trial. We weren't able to buy Starlink equipment in Australia to do the trial, and it wasn't available in any of the partner territories that we wanted to do the projects with. So that's, that's the rules from their funding service. And so that's why we want to try and find a funding program that is more liberal. More comments, questions? Chihu's thinking of ideas. But if you don't have any questions, then I release you 4 minutes early for the end of the session. And we're going to shutter the afternoon session, Terry.
People in the audience, we might just have an open session for anyone who has any eduroam based questions they want to throw at Rook. I think we've lost our.
Yeah, we've lost Farhan. We've still got Hideaki.
Blad's obviously gone.
Yeah, Blad's gone a while ago.
But
So-
if you have any questions about eduroam, don't turn up, we'll disappear.
Yeah, is it 3? It's a half-hour break, so 3:30 we'll be back. We'll hang around for 15 minutes. If we don't get a yes. Oh, what underpants am I wearing? Yeah.
But thanks, Brooke.
Yeah.
Some big sessions there. Thank you, guys. I hope you have. Yeah.
Okay. Rather than a sponsor. So just as a sales pitch, this is I'm sometimes involved now with the NSRC. That's the Network Startup Resource Center. It operates out of the University of Oregon Library and is predominantly funded by the National Science Foundation of the United States. But you can go to their website and see their other supporters, which include the Google Foundation, Internet Society, Hewlett-Packard Foundation, and periodically it receives money from many other organizations globally. The NSRC, is basically a charity that works to improve research and education networking opportunities by connecting people and doing a lot of training and assistance in those communities. These numbers keep going up. It's been increased by a whole 36 people from a training event that we just ran recently in the Philippines. And so this is a map. Oh, you can't see it so well. We need to get a darker version of the map. But you can see currently, oh, my little mouse does not do anything. Okay. I said it moved. Did it move? It just got further away. It's not moving. But we've recently received a request from Namibia. You see, if you know where Namibia is, maybe you don't, but it's on the lower west coast of Africa. Currently does not have a dot on it at all, and they have requested some support for the deployment of eduroam in their territory. But you can see the NSRC has been around for a while and has supported a huge number of campuses and research networks. There's sort of three main training programs that the NSRC does. Campus network design and operations. That's the event that we ran most recently. And that's to look at fixing your campus network, to work out what is and isn't working on your campus, how you should structure your campus as you move from a potentially a flat, flat network with a hub connected to a commodity internet provider, to evolving that network to be a switch network. You might have a very complex campus network over multiple buildings. And so as your campus network grows, depending on how you structure it, it could become worse and worse over time, and you could have more problems. And so your campus network doesn't support your needs. Once you've got a good structure and good bones for your campus network, network monitoring and management is another popular course that's run, and the BGP course, which looks at advanced networking and internet exchange point deployment. This is particularly popular with the network operations group community, the NOG community, and you'll often see NSRC training held at events. Apricot I think in about 3 weeks' time. Apricot's being held here in Bangkok. There'll be various training programs run by NSRC as well as run by APNIC. But they'll also turn up to the SANOG, but they might turn up to your LKNOG event in Sri Lanka, or MNNOG in Mongolia. So particular groups will turn up for training of the wider NOG community. There will be a future course at some point on identity and access management. So that's a goal. It's a constant request from the NSRC participants. Once they start to do campus networking, how do we make Wi-Fi better? How do we get access to services on campus? And so as a sort of an evolution of that campus networking design and operations, there'll be some work on identity management. And a lot of that will be drawn from the experience of TFIM. And the other thing they do is direct engineering assistance. So often at the conclusion of these training courses, they'll work with the host college or university or research network, and they'll work on some concrete design changes to the network to facilitate this roadmap of improvement. That'll be coupled with a report that has recommendations on what you should tackle next. For very complex campus networks, maybe only one building, will be redesigned, but with a blueprint of you should carry this design to other buildings. So depending on how your campus is structured and how much time is available. So that it can be kind of stressful toward the end of your engagement, having to deal with a campus network that you're trying to improve, and you might inadvertently break. So this is all about building on good foundations, right? Everybody wants to build on good foundations. This is a great example of something that's kind of great, but not built on such a great foundation. And, probably have seen either documentaries or news reports, actually costs a lot of money, A, to keep this building leaning and to underpin its foundations so that it doesn't actually collapse and destroy itself. But it would be a lot better to have never had this problem to begin with, right? So if you can build on good foundations, this is what we saw when we went to, one of the complaints was campus wireless at the institution. And you can see, this is unfortunately the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum down the bottom, which actually doesn't have a lot of bandwidth, doesn't have a lot of channels that are separated. And what we were seeing is not only did they have campus Wi-Fi, which was mostly well set up, but every single department that had access to its own funds bought its own Wi-Fi gear and added it to the network. And so they were trying to solve a problem, but they're actually making it worse. They're buying equipment, they're randomly picking channels. You can see here, they've gone for a very wide channel in the 2.4 gigahertz space. I don't know why, because a wide channel has more bandwidth and it will be faster, but it's not faster when it collides with all of your existing channels. You just make it worse for everyone. And so many groups that were rich, graduate school, hospitality school, engineering, everybody bought their own equipment, and it just made the whole network not work at all. And so we looked at how to clean this up, how to limit your use of the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum where possible, and try and consolidate on 5 gigahertz. Most of your equipment now, your phones, your laptops, all support 5 gigahertz for quite some time. And if you go visit the Huawei booth, you'll see there's now 6 gigahertz available for some use. You can make even more. Can make your wireless more functional, but you'll see here wide channels and narrow channels. But even though the Philippines allows you to use wireless channels all the way up to 157, they weren't using them. They were still consolidating them all down into this bottom, very crowded space. So it was, why are you doing that? Right? And it was like they were just using the defaults of their equipment. And we actually found out a default which was set to auto for one vendor that they had. Auto meant when there's a power outage and the access point boots up, listen to see if there's any access points around. And if they're not, pick a channel and stay on that channel forever. And that's not what people necessarily think auto means. And so in a power outage, they had unstable power. All of the devices would largely all start up at the same time. They wouldn't hear any other traffic because they're all starting up. And they all pick these low channels because they're all free. And then they stay on these channels and don't go anywhere. But the tool had this dynamic option, which would continually listen to see if there was interference. And if there was, pick a different frequency to separate channels. And we tried this, and we saw the channels in all of their buildings get separated and not overlap. And so you could have done a proper Wi-Fi survey and manually assigned channels, but that's a lot of effort, takes a lot of time, and you can still get it wrong. And so the controller infrastructure they had was actually quite good at automatically fixing this just by changing a default, and better bothering to read the vendor manual, right? Read the manual, what's the expression? Read the friendly manual. The other thing, this is a photo of equipment that was removed from the campus network, right? Usually people think that they need something new, something more, but actually to try and improve their network, they had installed infrastructure and made multiple layers of NAT. which actually it meant that they didn't have visibility of their own network. They could not see if the library network was working because it was now behind layers of NAT. And so they actually didn't know, like the only time they had like a group WhatsApp and staff would complain about something not working. And the problem is sometimes your staff are not the best at fault finding. They just say, this is not working, right? And it doesn't explain what the problem is, right? It's not, it's a complaint that's going to like third line support, but it's not useful information. And so they took a lot of equipment out and looked at improving. They had a monitoring system already in place, but using that existing monitoring to try and give more visibility so you know if the campus network is working or not. And so there's not really questions and discussions, but the argument is NSRC will come and do training courses for you. They can do direct engineering assistance for you, but you have to request it. It's a demand-driven system. So I'm asking you, if you're interested, then you have to request it, right? If you're confused about how to go about that, visit the NSRC website, nsrc.org. There's a section about the direct engineering assistance and a PDF and Word document that you can read. And so this is an option that might be useful to you in trying to solve it. Now, obviously, people are a finite resource. We can't do everything for everybody, but we're willing to put it in the queue and work through as many requests as possible. And so how is this funded? The NSRC fund the travel and the salaries of the trainers and the engineers involved. And you as the local host are expected to provide the hospitality, the accommodation, and hopefully that's something within your power to do. And you can also raise that by levying a fee on the training course, right? So if you need a way to be able to fund that local hospitality component, but yeah, please talk to the NSRC and they will work with you where possible. Or alternatively, you can get to a NOG event, either Apricot, a SANOG event, or a local NOG event, and hopefully there'll be training available in those locations. And if you don't have a NOG, I think everyone's got a NOG nearly, you can work on setting up a NOG. The Internet Society have funds available to support NOGs. I think maybe APNIC has money to support NOGs. If they don't, they certainly have trainers that will attend NOG events in order to provide training in there's a vast array of training that APNIC make available that support their members. And so since NOGs are composed of members of APNIC, that's a great way of getting training that's local to your community. And I think Terry's got a QR code for you to discuss further. I'll take the stunned silence as no questions, but if you've got questions, just raise your hand.
We're going to join the
Network slowed down this afternoon. Oh, just getting into Zoom is slow. Connecting. There's network engineers down the hall. Zoom. And while we're waiting for that to magically happen, about tomorrow. But tomorrow's going to be a sort of interesting day. There we go, finally. Screen. Okay, so if you want to join our Slack channel, there's an enormous QR code for you to point your phones at. And once you're in Slack, add yourself to the IAM task force or the eduroam one and eduroam one, and any others that may be of interest. It's not just the task force that's using Slack within Apan, but all the other task force working groups are also part of that Slack group, and they have their own channels. So might be some interesting stuff happening in that space. That might stop you up. And the other thing I wanted to get to today. So tomorrow, we only have 2 sessions tomorrow because half the day has been taken up by the opening ceremony and plenary talks and so forth. So in the morning, we've got short talks and Federation updates. So I'm going to start the morning off with what is REFEDS, just for those who don't know what the Research and Education Federations group's all about. Then we're going to get Farhan to talk about Cifilan, connect and give us an update and future directions on where they're going with their tooling. So the Federation as a service, eduroam as a service, and IDP as a service, and some other bits and pieces. Al, who's no longer here with us this afternoon, but he's going to talk about the REFEDS assurance framework. And that's all about ensuring that the person who's logging in is actually the person that is logging in. It's not just Mickey Mouse at the end of the keyboard. So how that works. They'll also give us an update on the EduGain futures and EduGain governance activity. And by tomorrow, we may have a knowledge of who's the new EduGain steering committee. We may not, but Hal's hoping to have that. After that, I'll be talking about the REFEDS baseline. So what's the minimum standards that REFEDS and EduGain are expecting of Federation operators, identity providers and service providers to be part of EduGain, and just generally how to be providing a good quality service to the community. And after all of that, we'll have Federation updates if we have time. So if you have something to update in your Federation space, we'd love to hear about it. only needs a couple of minutes, or as long as you actually need to tell us about what's happening in your space. So that's the morning session. In the afternoon session, we'll be looking at Certify, which is a security. Never remember what this acronym stands for, but it's all about security in federated space, and going through what the acronym means, what the actual guidelines are talking about, and I'm going to be trying to run a certified training activity later in the year, probably September, October, where we actually test out some certified responses, challenges, to see how well people actually understand how Certify works. Part of Certify is about communicating between the various components of the Federation, between service providers who may be getting attacked by an entity from an identity provider across the other side of the world. How do we get those two organizations, those people in those organizations, to communicate with each other, to identify the problem, work through the issues, work through the attack, and try and reduce the attack or eliminate the attack and get it resolved? And how do you bring the Federation operators into that conversation? And how do you bring eduroam and their security team into that conversation? So the Australian Access Federation, of which I'm a part, was involved in a similar training activity last year, which was run by the National Institute of Health out of the US. We're very keen on security. They had two scenarios running simultaneously, and we just part of the flow, we got part of the messaging, and testing the training was actually how well do we actually pass that messaging on, and how well did we receive information backwards and forwards between the various parties. So we'll be looking at that tomorrow. Then on Wednesday, it's all about Federation stuff and connecting services to the Federation. So I'll go into more detail about that tomorrow afternoon after we finish the certified stuff. So that's it for today, unless anyone has any specific eduroam questions to ask. Has everyone been successful with this QR code? I should be able to jump onto Slack and see that we have lots more bodies. I've got 6 still, but expect people to join as they work through how to actually install Slack and work out how to add your channel. So you get to finish up early today, a whole extra hour for your day. I'm not sure. So it's the program. So there's no dinners or anything this evening. Short talks of Federation. Yes, tomorrow night's the welcoming dinner. And Wednesday is nothing Wednesday. And Thursday night's the boat cruise, river cruise, dinner cruise. And Friday's the closing ceremony. It finished about lunchtime, yeah. Yep. Thank you, program. Okay, any closing questions before we call it a day? Have an hour off. They might magically change names overnight once we terminate properly as the task force and rename it to the working group. But we'll be effectively doing the same stuff. Yeah, there is a bigger number. So I'm looking for some co-chairs to help me run the working group and to run activities between APANs, meetings, trainings, whatever you want to do. But I need some people to help me out and sort of give us direction on what it is you guys want to learn, want to understand, want to develop. There's always opportunity to talk about funding, training, whatever you need. We'll try and help you get it off the ground. Brooke's the man to go to if you want to find any funding opportunities, because he's always looking for them for himself. And he's always trying to get me involved in these things too, so, and Farhan and others. And we're all here to help. And it'd be great if you guys were willing to sort of run some training yourselves. So
popular amongst the student. There's a publicity is also required a little bit, publicity and maybe because those young people, they think also sometimes that people are watching us. If we are on the eduroam, so maybe we are in danger. So there is something psychologically, and they want to have their own private things. The small devices, the EO, and this kind of thing, the dongle that they want to carry. So that thing also we need to have some kind of education to the end user, take the training to the end user. What is good in this technology for them? That is maybe one thing missing, and we are working on that aggressively in our country, in Pakistan, to bring everybody on board and use this technology. So this is one thing we are doing. Another, of course, it's a lot of technological, like the presentation you showed before. There's a lot of issue with us that we have deployed technologies related to the connectivity in the last 1 decade, and now it's difficult to have funding to upgrade them. And then the people they're leaving, that is another thing. That's the engineers who have created those setups, they have left because of many reasons in our part of the world. And that is another thing that they drain out, and that is creating issue for the HR. So the HR and the people they are running the eduroam and other connectivity, they need to have some incentive in that, maybe in the form of projects. If they are involved, they have projects, they have challenges. How many people stay with those kind of systems? If there's no challenges, no upgradation in their knowledge. So those are something we can work on, and this is a fascinating facilities and technology, I think.
And you mentioned that you're running a program to do some of this training.
We have started these things with our universities. We are maybe you know, or you may not know, in Pakistan we are so connected. All of the university, they're looking to just one body, the HEC, which is the Higher Education Commission, and there's some reason as well, because there's no other services available to the universities better than this what we have. So all of the universities are connected to us so much, and they are actually trusting on the Higher Education Commission. The trust element is also there, since it's a government body, and it has shown its worth to the university. That is another. So we are trying to train. Even now in our country, last government distributed 100,000 laptops to students. And now another scheme is coming that each and every student admitting to the 4 years bachelor program will be getting some sort of device. Either it will be a laptop or gadget or tablets or something by the time of the registering for the bachelor degree program. So that is something 600,000 laptops that we are talking to some companies that how it can be provided to the universities. So we see this is also a problem. Students, they don't have technology, they don't have something in hand. They have some low-end mobiles, but they do not have high-end devices. So that's one thing we have started. The government is supporting a lot. This is 15 billion rupees project. This upcoming 600,000 laptops, and 100,000 already distributed in the last few months. So now people, especially young people, and you know that the population in Pakistan is 65% people. They are the age group 18 to 15 to 30 years. That is the university going age. So it's more than the population of many countries, like maybe 65 out of 230 million people. So there's 70, 70 or 80 million people that are in the age group, young people, young population. So that is also a lot of responsibility, I think, on our society to give them proper education, give them proper technology so they can grow and they can learn. So we will need a lot of support from organizations like yours and others to how to reach to those young people, especially in the remote areas. So we'll come up with some ideas. We'll be, inshallah, talking to you as well. Got good ideas from here. But we are doing these kind of activities, as I mentioned.
It'd be great to get some feedback about how your programs worked and how well they went, so other nations can use.
Yeah,
what you
that
did.
can be shared, what we are doing, and that can be documented and shared with other people.
That's what these meetings are all about. So
Yeah,
you can be contributing back to this community. So
yeah,
other
of
communities
course,
can also grow.
yeah, yeah.
Brooks wants to
Yeah.
say.
Arnett leads a project called In the Field. I think In the Field Stories. There's a website. I don't know if it's inthefieldstories.net or inthefield.net,
Okay.
but it's not talking about technology, but it's the applications of technology.
Okay.
So what is the research and education benefit of that? And you were talking about funding.
Yeah.
So after we did this engagement in the Philippines, we presented what needs to happen next. The president announced, well, the 2024 budget has already been decided. So we will take your recommendations forward for 2025.
Okay.
And it's like, okay, so we've just started a program of fixing your network, and lots of people are complaining about the network.
Okay.
And there is some infrastructure changes that need to be made and will cost money. And I said, so you need to go back to all of the departments that have been allocated budget to see if they want to donate it to the network, because it's when your network is working well, that's usually the hardest to justify funding for renewal and replacement, right? But when the network collapses, then everyone complains, and only then is when you get funding, right? You basically don't want to pay. You don't want to fund the fire service when your house is on fire. You want to fund the fire service, so they can go and do inspections and make sure that surrounding forests don't have too much undergrowth and things like that, and houses are safe. And so, you need to have a renewal of infrastructure over time, unfortunately. And that's also a renewal of the skill sets of users. Because if you employ people who don't know what they're doing and you don't train them, then you compound those mistakes. And so training and sharing of experiences, and it's I hear in the field stories.
That is a serious issue especially with the third world countries. They do not spend a lot on the people. They spend on the technology one time, and even they don't keep money for the maintenance. We did another thing with this laptop schemes. There's a Coursera license. More than 50,000 licenses have been obtained. from Coursera, and students have given free license. So they are taking those courses, and we have seen that some students even they have taken more than 10 courses and got certificates as well. And as per our survey and statistic, more than 50% graduate student, when they did Coursera, they got promotion in their jobs, the postgraduate student. So there's a lot of usefulness coming if you are training people. That's
Yeah. You should also look at, if you're unaware, of the APNIC, is it called APNIC Academy, E-Academy? APNIC has a
Yeah.
huge range of self-paced online courses and webinars that you can go through.
okay.
And so I would sometimes get students from the local university that would want to do work, and I would make all of them do the Intro to SSH course
Okay.
that APNIC has available, just so they can have that basic understanding of how to use SSH to get access to servers. Because even though they were doing a security degree at the university, somehow they had not ever covered this.
Okay.
And
the skills normally.
yeah,
Skills
and
come
so
from here,
and
yeah.
so this
Yeah.
they have like this virtual lab
Okay.
that you can do on how to do SSH and how
Okay.
to understand key management in SSH.
Mm.
It's a very simple course.
Awesome.
It might take you like 90 minutes. It's a
Okay.
very useful building block. And then there's a whole range of, they get increasingly more difficult and cover networking and routing and DNS. It's free to sign up for an
Okay.
APNIC, labs account, E-Academy account.
We'll put it into Edugain.
Yes, yes. But there's
Yeah.
there's some and
Yeah.
like some things will take longer than the suggested amount of
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
But for self-paced courses in all of the platforms that you're likely to have,
These
this
are
is a
very useful courses. Sometimes it's so targeted. You just talk about one specific aspects of the skills. So the skills comes from here. Normally, the normal traditional degrees do not give proper skills for jobs. So we encourage a lot of students because of the laptop schemes and other. We have given these things as well. Even the paid one, we can. Yeah,
Linux Basics, the
yeah.
Linux Basics one,
Okay.
the hashing lab.
Yeah.
Actually, I found really interesting for
Okay.
and it's like I picked up tips. I've been a sysadmin like forever, and there were new tips that I found by doing that course that it's like, oh, that's pretty smart. And so yeah, a failed project proposal of mine was to actually put some wireless, some radius, and some eduroam courses into this environment. But maybe we can have success in the future in doing that, so that because there are so many of these labs that cover common infrastructure. Yeah, you can spend a long time doing these courses, and it's very useful for self-paced, for your own staff. To be familiar and also play in an environment where they can use a virtual environment and they're not breaking your real infrastructure, right? There's also a whole range of some things aren't in these courses. Some are pre-recorded webinars that you can watch, but there's a whole range of content there that's useful. And if it's not useful, you can skip it, right? You can just find the stuff that's directly applicable for your needs.
Give you all courses.
So, predominantly you are probably all members of APNIC directly or, ever so slightly indirectly. And so, yeah, you should take advantage of this, that there's no good reason not to spend some time on some of these courses. There's also, well, NSRC have a range of videos that Terry alluded to before. Yeah, we're going to try and supplement those. I'm not too sure what yeah. And these are hosted on YouTube, but there's a whole range of courses that, and we're going to look at, refreshing these programs and this content so that it's relevant to what everyone is doing now. Really does exist, but hopefully it's just the internet creaking at the moment. I don't know. Maybe there's a testbed project going on or something.
When we have a look at Refeds tomorrow, they've got a lot of resources as well. First one off the bat, eduroam and identity services. And they're all about 5 or 10 minutes long, so they're all very basic, but they give you an idea, and you can show them to your management folk, your IT directors and leadership at the university, saying, this is what eduroam is. This is what federation is. Okay. Good questions. Good discussion. Anything else? Now, you've only got half an hour left now.
Yeah, you really want an early minute, you need to stop talking.
And thanks for you all participating today and making the day very successful. I think it's been a very good day for learning about eduroam, updating your skills. Thanks, everyone. Well done.